The original Aeternoblade was released for Nintendo 3DS in 2014 and following up on consoles soon after. Now, the sequel has hit, Aeternoblade 2. But does this one end up cutting through the competition, or is this blade so dull it can't cut anything? Aeternoblade 2 is an action hack-and-slash game that does have a few Metroidvania RPG elements sprinkled in, but for the most part you'll be exploring rather large maps and fighting lots, and I mean lots of enemies, mashing the attack button quite a bit. The game is a continuation of the story from the original Aeternoblade, but it doesn't really do a whole lot of explaining of that, so if you haven't played the original you may be a little bit lost, but trust me, this game is much more about the gameplay than its story. The main character from the original game does make a return in Freya, but there's also 2 more playable characters added into the mix, in Felix and Bernard, and all 3 characters play a little bit different from one another and do have different abilities. Unfortunately, during the early parts of the game, you keep switching between the characters after defeating either a boss or completing a certain area, and this happens a lot, so as soon as you feel comfortable with one character, you're immediately switched to one of the other ones. This thankfully does slow down as the game progresses. Unlike the original Aeternoblade, this one is not just all a 2D perspective. For certain areas, certain either enemy encounters or boss fights, it does switch to a 3D perspective, which gives the game a whole new look and does really end up freshening up the gameplay from getting completely stale of just mashing that attack button. Now, when you get to the boss encounters, it is a different story. These are pretty lengthy fights and you will have to do a lot of dodging and pattern recognition in order to survive these fights, and they do feel pretty satisfying once you're able to complete them. Outside of the boss encounters, you are running around these maps. It does have a little bit of that Metroidvania-esque quality to it, just the whole layout, the way the game looks, as well as there is backtracking areas, hidden passageways, and the like as you explore the various castles and other locations. And thankfully the game does a decent enough job at changing up the locations and enemy types, so it doesn't get too boring, at least at what you're looking at. At certain save locations, you'll have these puzzle rooms that you'll be able to enter, and you'll have to use your character's skills accordingly to figure it out, some of which are pretty challenging. They are mostly optional, but if you do complete them, you get some nice rewards for doing them. Presentation-wise, graphics and music were okay, but voice acting left a little bit to be desired for sure. From the technical side of things, I did have some slowdown and the game did crash on me. There's thankfully been a couple of patches already that have seemingly fixed some of the issues the game had when I first started playing it. The game also has some issues in the camera department. In the 2D segments, it's not too bad, but it's zoomed in a little too close at times, and in the 3D segments, honestly, the camera fights you more than helps you. Aeternoblade 2 is available now on the PlayStation 4 for $29.99. It does feature a Platinum trophy. The game is also available on the Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Overall, Aeternoblade 2 isn't bad, but it does lack polish. The hack-and-slash gameplay is okay, but it gets repetitive, has some questionable hit detection, and doesn't really feel like you have a whole lot of impact with your hits. The presentation is a little bit lacking, and at $29.99, it's a little bit hard to recommend at this point. With everything said, I'm going to be giving Aeternoblade 2 on the PlayStation 4 a 6 out of 10. That's going to wrap up this review, though. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.